Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Steven Shapiro. He's an engineer turned renowned speaker and consultant who helps organizations cultivate a culture of innovation and creative problem solving. With a dynamic and engaging style, he delivers practical strategies to drive business growth and transformation. So, for those of you all who are considering becoming speakers, you probably have a lot of questions. How do you go about doing it? What do you charge? How do you get speaking engagements? We'll get into a lot of those questions and more in this conversation. Welcome to Teach the Geek interview, Stephen.
It's great to be here. And being an engineer, I consider myself to be a bit of a geek. So I'm definitely honored to be here.
Wonderful. First question: how did you come to your speaking topic?
So I got into the world of innovation, not first as a speaker, but as a consultant. So I was at Accenture, which is a big management consulting firm. And I was leading a practice around business optimization. It was almost the opposite of innovation. We were making companies more efficient. And so one of the things that happened is I realized is as we made companies more efficient, people were losing their jobs. And I just woke up one day and said, this is not what I want my life to be about. So I started to think about, well, what do I want to do? And I loved consulting. So I decided to create a practice around innovation, which is going to help companies grow and create more jobs. And that's what I've been doing for nearly 30 years now, is working with companies around the topic of innovation, helping them grow. And eventually I became a speaker when I saw some other people who were speakers, and I thought, this is a cool way to make a living.
Oh, nice. Okay, so it sounds like you do speaking, you do consulting. Is there any other services that you offer potential clients?
So I do a lot of workshops because people like that hands-on thing. But my favorite thing to do with clients is something I call my Fast Innovation Mastery Program. And that's an apprenticeship program. So people who buy into my philosophy for innovation, basically people who believe that what I do would be valuable for their team, they give me a group of people and we work together and I give them everything. And it's not training because we take real world problems that they've not been able to solve, and we use my process together to solve those problems. And then once they've mastered the process, they then start teaching others inside the company. And we build basically an entire organization that's focused on innovation and growth.
Wow, that's really cool. And
It's a fun thing.
is that something that you initially thought to do, or is that something that evolved over time?
That definitely evolved over time. It actually happened because a client of mine who kept on bringing me in to do speeches and workshops and consulting, she said this with a lot of love and affection. She said, I'm tired of constantly bringing you in. I would like to build my team to be able to think the way you think, do what you do, and be able to solve problems the way you solve them. And so together we created this program a number of years ago. And it's been probably my favorite thing to do, is really helping people become better at this work, not just telling them, but actually working collaboratively with them to get them to become masters in this entire process.
All right. So for the people who are listening or watching this conversation, Stephen, and they think, I think I'm a pretty good speaker, and I've now decided what my topic is going to be, what I'm going to speak on. What else do they need to have in place for them to become a speaker?
Well, I think that the toughest part of speaking isn't speaking. I mean, we can spend a lot of time becoming better speakers, developing great content. I think the toughest part of the speaking business is marketing and sales. So for many of us, we sort of view ourselves as salespeople who are in the speaking business. And so I would encourage people that if you want to become a speaker, really put on the hat of, yes, your content, yes, the quality of your speech, but also you can't forget that third part, which is the quality of your marketing and sales. And so I think probably one of the most important things for someone to have is a really great speaking reel. Basically, it is something which takes about 3 minutes long, and it really helps people understand the quality of your speech, the content of your speech in just a very short amount of time. I think that's probably one of the most important assets you can develop as a speaker.
Yeah, I think you're right. Your answer reminds me of a conversation I had with a woman maybe a few months ago, and she was talking about how she's been working on her speech for quite some time, and she thinks it's going to be ready in a few months. I just remember thinking to myself, well, what you really should be doing is getting it out there and talking to people and just see what and they'll let you know whether the topic that you're speaking on is something that is useful to them. Their feedback will help you refine the speech as opposed to you just being in your home practicing and practicing and practicing. It's like at some point you have to get out there and actually do it.
100%. I mean, that as an innovation person, you're speaking my language. You never develop something and then try to sell it. You sort of build the smallest version of it, a prototype or a minimum viable product or whatever, and then you bring it to the market. So, for example, when I launched my new book just a couple of weeks ago, well, I couldn't wait till the book came out to have a speech. So, what I've been doing for well over a year now is like for some unpaid clients, I would do a virtual speech and it gave me a chance to test the content, see what works, what doesn't work, what's resonating, what's not working. And so over time, I keep on iterating with non-paying clients to get some feedback. Now, these are my target audience. These aren't just like friends and family. These are actual real innovation people, but I offer this to them as a gift and they gladly take me up on it. And it's, to me, the key is to understand what pains do you solve that people are ready to, hear your solution, but you got to test it out. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Another point about you made about the importance of a speaker reel. I agree. People want to see you actually speak to know that you're a speaker. But for someone who's just starting out, if they don't have I guess, the video of them in front of an audience, how do you think they should approach developing a speaker reel?
There are people who are experts on the topic of speaker reels. That's not mine. But basically, what I know a number of people have done is, first of all, if you're giving speeches for free, I think that's the key thing. And actually, I'm going to reframe that. I never give free speeches, but I do give unpaid speeches. And to me, there's a big difference. Uh, an unpaid speech means I'm being paid in something other than money. But so I'm not collecting a speaking fee, but I'm getting something else. So, for example, reach out to events, associations, whatever it might be, and offer to do a speech for free in exchange for being able to have it videotaped. A lot of these bigger events already have camera crews. So maybe you don't get paid, but you do get some great video reel. That's certainly one way to do it. Another way to do it is some people actually hire out a hall. There are a number of different events that people hold specifically for people who don't have any video that want to get some. So there's a lot of creative ways to do it, but I would do it sooner rather than later and then just improve it over time. I think like everything, you just keep on improving it. As you get more and more feedback and as you get better video, you update it again.
Got it. Yeah, great advice. So for the work that you do, putting yourself out there as a speaker, how do you go about marketing yourself as a speaker?
My main business, I did an assessment a number of years back, and I know it still is true, is most of my revenue comes from people I already have a relationship with. Now, there are some speakers who have completely different models. They do cold calling and cold outreach. And for me, I've tried that and it's never seemed to work. So, what I've always found to be the best thing to do is instead of trying to grow my network, I try to nurture my network. And so I have a CRM, which has a list of every client and prospect and relationship that I've had with people over the years, and I try to stay in touch with them. LinkedIn, I'm reaching out to people. I have the new book. I'm reaching out to selected people through LinkedIn, offering them a free copy of the book. So anything I can do to add value. These are never sales conversations. When I reach out to people, I'm never, trying to say, hire me, hire me. Again, it might work for some people, but for me, if I can be front and center in the minds of people in my network, and add as much value as possible with expecting nothing in return, I've always found that that's my best source of revenue.
Yeah, that's a great way to go about it for sure. If you have that network, and I suppose even if you're starting off as a speaker, you may think you don't have a network, but we all have networks. It's just maybe they don't know you as a speaker yet. But I suppose you can let them know that this is a path that you're going down now, and hopefully you would have developed that speaker reel you had spoken about. You already have your topic that you speak on and how you can help people, and then you just let those people know your plans and see if they can help you out.
Absolutely. Look, if you go through your email, every person, even if you've never given a speech, has hundreds or thousands of email addresses somewhere hidden in your email system. That's your network. friends, family, colleagues, coworkers. That's your network. I find a lot of times for people, the best thing to do is find the leverage point. So, if let's say you're thinking of becoming a speaker, but you currently work for, let's say, a big company. I'll just choose IBM, for example. Sometimes it's easier to reach out to people and build relationships with them while you are still at the big company. Because if you contact somebody and said, hey, I'm so and so, the head of innovation at IBM, that carries a lot more power than someone who says, hey, I'm so and so, and I just started my own business, and you don't know me, and you don't know my company, and you don't know anything about what I do. So if you have those relationships, they don't even have to be your own personal ones. You can leverage the brand of the company you're currently with. And then when you feel like you've built enough momentum, then you can choose that as a time to get into the speaking business. And in some cases, some companies are happy for you to do speaking on the side in addition to your job. That's almost ideal.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I think sometimes people think they got to make that break to finally, you know, kind of burn the what do you call burn the bridges and
Yeah.
go directly into speaking because they think if they don't, well, then they're not going to put 100% effort into it. But it's a slow build, especially when you first start to build up that clientele to even get that referral business and word of mouth business going. So you still have bills to pay in the interim. So I mean, how do you figure that out? It's as I think you mentioned, it's having the job and having that recurring income and building a speaking business as you go. I think that's great advice.
Oh, when I was at Accenture, the last 5 years, I did a lot of speaking. So I was leading a 20,000 person group, which helped, but I still was doing a lot of speaking. I wasn't being paid for my speeches, but I was still getting out there. And when you say, hey, I'm the head of, a 20,000 person innovation practice at Accenture, people are like, oh, that's cool. Would you love to speak? And I didn't get paid, but I got a lot of video. I got a lot of relationships, a lot of connections. And I think that's, and the great thing for Accenture was it helped build their reputation. They loved it. In fact, my first book, I actually wrote and published with a major publisher while I was at Accenture because they felt it would help grow their brand. So there's a lot of creative ways to do this if you want to get into this business.
Nice. When it comes to reaching out to people, and you mentioned staying top of mind with people you already know, people in your network, there's instances I'm sure where perhaps you reach out to somebody and someone doesn't get back to you. How do you handle following up with people?
I will say there are other people again who are much better at the whole sales process. I mean, I've heard so many different statistics. It's like 7 outreaches before somebody might get it back to you, and most people give up on the sixth. I don't know if those are true, but I try to, again, I don't want to be a pain in the butt. I figure, but I have found that there are times when I'd reach out to somebody, they don't get back to me. So I try to send them something else that might be. So, for example, with this most recent outreach that we're doing with the book, I offer them a book. Now, for a lot of people, the thought of trying to read a book right now when they have so much on their plate is just too much. So, what I did is I sent out an invitation for people to get the book if they wanted it. If I don't hear from them, I say, hey, I know you're busy. You might not even have time for books. So I created this 3-minute video that basically summarizes the key concepts of the book so that even if you never read the book, you'll at least understand what it's about. And maybe in watching this, it'll entice you to want to get the copy. And again, I'm giving away the book. So, and that's all I ever do in my outreach. I'm never trying to sell people. Again, that's my strategy. Everybody has a different strategy.
Interesting. All right. So yeah, so you're offering people your book or the 3-minute video, and by doing that, they then come back to you and say, well, this was a great book or a great video. Do you have time to speak about maybe coming into our organization? So you're relying on them to make that I guess that overture.
I do. And what I also do is after, so let's say I send out the message and somebody says, yeah, I'd love the book. And they get the book. And then I reach out to them a little bit later and say, hey, just wanted to check in. Did you read the book? And if you enjoyed the book, but you're struggling maybe to figure out how to apply some of the concepts, I'd be happy to hop on a phone call to have a brief conversation so we can explore how, we can go a little deeper into the content and I can answer any questions you have. Again, it's not a sales call. I never get in there and try to pitch anything. My philosophy has always been if I can add so much value for free that at some point somebody's going to say, if he's giving all this away, I can't imagine the value I get when we pay him. So that's always been my strategy is just give as much as I can. look, at some point I do need to sell, but I almost always rely on them to ask me rather than, my asking them.
Interesting. All right. How do you handle pricing your services?
It's always a tricky one. I mean, pricing, especially in the speaking world, is it's like you think about sports and entertainment, like, a famous rock star is going to get a lot more money than a cover band that's playing the same music. And I think the same thing is true with speaking. So the first thing is I strongly believe that as a speaker, you should have original content. It should be your content. Now, there's nothing wrong with using somebody else's content. It's just a different type of speech because then you're not the source of the content. And I think if you are the creator of the content, the source of the content, just like Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones, they're the creator of their music. A cover band could be amazing, but they didn't create the music. They're doing somebody else's music. So the first thing is, if you want to get the premium fees, in my opinion, it should be your own stories, your own life, your own examples, your own intellectual property, your own frameworks. And then I really think you just start testing it out. And early on in my career, my philosophy was I'm going to start low. And I started low. And once I had 2 or 3 speeches in a row where nobody negotiated on the price, I thought, okay, maybe it's time to raise it. And then I raised it maybe 20, 30, 50%. And I tried that. And if people didn't negotiate, I would raise it again. And you just sort of find a sweet spot. And look, you can also get a sense of what other people are charging. You can go to the bureau websites and you can see, okay, well, I have the same experience or gravitas as this person. They're charging X dollars. So you can also go down that path. But the speaking fees are purely subjective. It's like, is one speaker that much better than another? Not necessarily. So you really, I think, as you said, with your speech, you need to test your speech with the market. I think you need to test your fee with the market and see where they go. Now, I'll give you a quick caveat here. Can I tell you, this is a funny story. I haven't told this story in a long time, but I love this story. When I was starting out, so I left Accenture in 2001, and I was living in England at the time. And I was approached by a bureau based in London. And they said, and I sent them my videos and my book, and they knew that I worked for Accenture or just left Accenture, like, we're going to hire you. We're going to find, some speeches for you. So it's like, great. So one day I get a call from the bureau. This is, again, over 20 years ago. Cell phone technology isn't as good as it is now. So I had a really difficult time hearing them, and they had a difficult time hearing me. But they asked me the question, which you just asked, which is, what's your fee? And I was thinking about it, and I had not thought about it till that call, but I was like, and I just pulled a number out of the air, and I said, 3,500. Now, keep in mind, this was in England about 20 some odd years ago. I get a call about an hour later, and they said, look, it was a bad connection. We couldn't hear you. I think, what did I say? 3,500. Yeah. And they called me. We couldn't hear you very clearly. Was that $35,000 or 35,000 pounds, which at the time was about $60,000? I'm just curious. What do you think I told them?
Pounds?
I actually, that would have been the smarter answer. I said actually $3,500 because that's what I was thinking in my brain. And I never heard back from them. And so after a few weeks, I called them and said, hey, I just wanted to follow up on that event. Am I still in the running for it? And they said, oh, when you told us your fee was 3,500, we knew you weren't the right person. The person we hired got $35,000. And so my point with that is sometimes you can actually price yourself too low because there is a perception. Oscar Wilde said, everyone knows the cost of everything and the value of nothing, or a cynic knows the cost of everything and the value of nothing. And I think in a lot of cases, people assume our value based on our cost. And so you've got to get that right balance of, am I charging too much or am I charging too little? And again, it's not exactly a science. It's a little bit of an art there.
Wow, that's something for sure. That's unfortunate. You missed out on that. I'm sure you've made that back
Exactly.
up, and you've made that back up and then some in the interim. That's
Took a
terrible.
long time though. If I started it for $35,000 for my first speech, who knows where I'd be right now.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that when it comes to the pricing, you put something out there, and if you don't get any pushback from the client, then maybe you raise it. But when you do start to get that pushback and now you're in a negotiation, what type of things are you asking for in return for whatever price that they are willing to pay?
So what I try to do is when I sell something, I try to bundle in a lot of different things. So for example, I might bundle in some free books or ebooks because I can deliver hundreds or thousands of ebooks to an event at no cost to me. So I might bundle those in. I always bundle in a portal of custom content that people in the audience will get after the event that is specific for their event. So if somebody comes back to me and say, hey, we only have 75% of your fee, then what I might say is, in some cases, look, if it's a nonprofit or a smaller company, I might say, I get that. Let's do it. In some cases, what I might do is instead of reducing, I can reduce the fee by reducing the value. I might be like, okay, I won't include the 100 copies of the hardcover book, but I will give you 100 copies of the digital version. So there's a lot of different ways to do that because I don't want to be seen as someone who reduces their fee just because somebody pushes back. So I want to find a way of maybe shifting the value, still giving them everything that they need and want, but maybe pulling back a little bit.
All right. Yeah, I think that makes sense for sure. Stephen, there are people out there that offer, or organizations that offer programs for people who are aspiring to be speakers to help them in developing their speaking business. What are your thoughts on such programs and their helpfulness to aspiring speakers?
I think they're great. I think, it's an industry that you need to learn from others. Over 20 years ago, I joined the National Speakers Association, and it's a great association for professional speakers to learn more about the speaking industry. But I think more importantly, you meet other people who are in the same boat. And so my greatest learnings, my greatest lessons from the National Speakers Association now aren't from going to the conferences, but it's staying in touch with the people I've met and asking them questions. So if I have a question on referrals, if I have a question on licensing, or if I have a question on videos, I know who to call. We also create mastermind groups. You can pay to be in a mastermind group, which is great, and it might be facilitated by somebody who's excellent and you'll pay a premium for it. But I also organize my own mastermind groups with people who are, again, at the same place with their careers. So for example, I created a mastermind group around book publishing because I was working on my 7th book. And I was like, I want other people that I can collaborate with and we can bounce ideas off of. Nobody paid anything. We just got together on Zoom calls from time to time. I'm in another mastermind where we meet in person every year, and then we have calls in between. So those cost you nothing. I think the key is don't try to do it on your own. Pay someone, read books, go to YouTube, whatever it is, join associations and create masterminds. There's just so many different ways to learn, but don't try to do it alone.
Yeah, that's great advice. Especially I really like the idea of masterminds. As you mentioned, you can meet virtually, and you don't have to cost. It doesn't cost anything. You can learn some ideas that maybe you didn't know before, and you can offer some ideas that the other people in the mastermind never considered. You're absolutely right
Exactly.
about not trying to do it on your own and try to figure everything out on your own because you're going to make a whole lot of mistakes that perhaps you could have avoided. Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, can I give you one important thing here, though, is so I have a book that's called Best Practices Are Stupid. And so when it comes to getting advice, do not assume that the advice is the correct advice for you. So, for example, my business, I've intentionally chosen to not have any W-2 employees. I have contractors and freelancers and 1099s. I have a lot of companies that I outsource some of my work to. I license my content to others, but I don't want any employees. So somebody who has a business with employees might give me advice that would be bad advice. Or maybe I don't want to work as much as others work. So again, whatever advice you get, keep in mind it has to be right for you, your content, your audience, your message. I'm a B2B speaker. I sell to businesses. My content is really for executives and companies. If I get advice from somebody who's in the B2C space, somebody who sells more to individuals, they might be a great speaker, but their topic talks to a person, not a company. Maybe their advice wouldn't be so relevant to what I'm trying to do. So it's great to get advice, but you as the speaker need to be skeptical in terms of receiving that advice and really ask, does it make sense for me? Would it work for me? And did it even really work for them? Because in some cases, it was all about timing, being at the right place at the right time. Some of the most famous speakers aren't better speakers. They didn't do anything differently, but they just happen to meet the right person or have the right topic at the right time. So again, just be a little skeptical anytime you get advice.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, there's absolutely the difference between B2B and B2C. I remember a number of years, I mean, a couple of years ago now, there was a woman that I met at a networking event. I told her about what I do, and she asked me if I had TikTok. I said no. I said, no, no, you need to be on TikTok. You can get the out or the engagement you get on TikTok is so great, and you can build up a large following really quickly. And so I thought, okay, let me try getting a TikTok. So I had TikTok. I used to do videos every day. I did that for about 3 months, 5 days a week, and nothing came from it. And I know now why nothing came from it because as you are, I'm a B2B person, and what B2B person is looking for a speaker on TikTok? It's not a thing. Like people on TikTok are like 15 years old. What am I talking to them for? They can't do nothing for me. So yeah, you're absolutely right about taking advice with a grain of salt for sure. All right. So for the people who are watching or listening to our conversation, Stephen, and they have their topic, they have their speaker reel, they are speaking in front of people, and they're now thinking, I really would like to leave my corporate job and do this full time. What do they need to have in place to make that happen?
Before you do that, I would just make sure you are really solid on your marketing. So make sure you have a really good professionally done website. They don't have to cost you a ton of money. There's so many ways to create inexpensive websites that are really professional. Again, get that great speaking reel. And make sure you have your CRM, your customer relationship management database set up. So make sure you have all of the foundation and the fundamentals in place. And again, if you work for a big company, make sure you've leveraged that company's name and brand to build connections with others before you leave, so that when you do leave, people don't just think of you as, hey, this is so and so. This is like, you worked with this company and I knew you when you were at that company. So I would say those are the key things. But as you said, get started now, start doing unpaid, no fee speeches, get some great video, do them virtually, test out the speeches, make sure that what you're doing really resonates with the audience, and then go for it. And I would also say, though, it's an unpredictable business, so hopefully you have a few dollars in the bank, because you don't know when the first paychecks are going to be coming, and it can be a little scary at times.
Yeah, 100%. This has been a great conversation, Stephen. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
The easiest way is actually to go to theinnovationspeaker.com. I do that because spelling my name is always confusing because people never spell it correctly. So theinnovationspeaker.com will actually bring you to my speaking page. And from there, you can go to my homepage where you'll see my speaking reel and you'll see my marketing messages and the types of problems that I solve. So that's probably the best place to start.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Stephen.
My pleasure. Thank you.